All right, this is going to be a lesson on blues scale exercises. So by blues scale, I'm talking about the pentatonic minor scale. So this would be the E pentatonic minor scale. Open in 3, open 2, open 2, open 2, open 3, open 3. So most people know that one. That's like your entry level scale to start trying to learn how to solo with. So we're going to play the scale up and down. Use your down up picking. Now when you're done, let's start with the down and go back, because when you start with the down, that's like a new measure. It's like a 1 and 2 and. So a new thing, a lot of people will get up here and they'll come on back without finishing the whole thing. I recommend you finish the whole thing so you can start the thing from the other direction with a new downstroke, which is how a new measure would start. Just pause for a second there and then come on back with a downstroke first. That way you're doing your alternate picking all the way through. Now there's an exercise we can do which is fours, ascending groups of fours. So what we're going to do is the first 4 notes. That's our first set of 4. Then we're going to come down to the second note of the scale. We started with the E, the first note of the scale. The second set of 4, we're going to start with the G note. So 3, O, 2, and open on the D. So we had 2 sets. We had O, 3, O, 2. Then we're going to start on the 3. We want to get our alternate picking going with that too. Down, up, and that gives you good practice skipping strings while keeping your alternate picking going. So now the next note is the open A. So we're going to go O2, O2. I like to use different fingers instead of trying to roll the same one over, because sometimes the sound will roll over as well and it sounds like not separate notes but like a chord kind of starting to happen. And sometimes you don't want that for clarity. Sometimes you want them to be very separate from each other. So this would be those first 3 sets again. Then we're going to start on the B note here. And by using different fingers in the same fret on different strings, I'm able to keep that clarity I was talking about there. Then we're on the D string. Then the 2 of the D string. Up into the B string there. Then we're going to have G string open. 2 on the G string. Open B string. Finishes it off. So one more time. Here we go. And then we'll go back. So that's our first set, 3-0, 3-0. And then we're going to come to the open little E string and start with the downstroke. Once again, we're doing down, up in each of these sets. So, and then you just keep going. So it's helpful to keep track of which note of the scale you started your set of 4 with. So if I know it's like the G here, then I know it's got to be the E after that. So, and then it's got to be the D, and then the B, and the A, and the G, etc. So let's try that. I'll count you guys in. I'll say 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll continue at that pace. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we'll get ready to go back. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the fours exercise with position 1 of E minor pentatonic. So now we're going to do a 3s exercise. This is triplets. This is going to get a little trickier with the down up picking, because we're going to have a down up down on the first string, the 6th string in this case, but our first string of the exercise. Down up down, and then we have to go to the next string, go up down up, while coming back to that bigger string. See how that was 5th string to 6th string back to 5th. So this takes your alternate picking to like the next level, having to think about those 3s, sets of 3s. So I'm going to play through the whole thing, and then we'll count it off. So I'll say 1, 2, 3, and then we'll start. So 1, 2, 3. B starts D, E, G, A, B, D, E, G. Now going back, let's try that. I'll play it once and then we'll count it off. So it gets a little tricky here. You got down, and then up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so real quick to finish those off, think about also using hammer-ons and pull-offs. So if I'm going to do that fours thing, I can hammer on both of those. And I can hammer that one in between on that set. So. And then pull-offs on the way back. Okay, so those are fun to try. Now let's take that first position as the most important one to know, because with that one you could play at least that first position in any key. So let's say we start on the 3rd fret. We're going to have that same finger pattern basically. But it does look different now that we don't have any open strings. We have to play each note. So, and just to review like how to find all the different keys real quick. So you got to know how to find all the notes on your big string. So, you know, E to F is 1 fret, G is 2 frets, A is 2 frets, B is 2, but then B to C is only 1, and then D is 2, and then you're back to E on the 12th fret. So if you know all those notes and the stuff about the sharps, like here's G and here's A, that one in between is either a G sharp or an A flat, kind of depending on the context. So knowing that, you can find all the notes on the big string. If you can find all the notes on the big string, you can put this pattern in there, and you'd be playing in the blues in that key, no matter what note you're on. So that would be A in that case. This would be like, you call this B flat. So you'd want to practice those exercises. The same way we did. Sometimes I'll switch that finger. If you get higher up the neck, you can go to that ring finger instead of using the pinky all the time. It's a little bit stronger. It can kind of work things out, especially when you get into bends. You can play the blues in any key, just knowing that stuff with that first position. And like I say, it's good to practice those exercises, picking them all in 4s and in 3s and triplets, and then also thinking about trying to do hammer-ons and pull-offs with those as well. So think about something like Good Times, Bad Times by Led Zeppelin. So he has a ripping lead bit right in there that goes straight through that 3s exercise in the key of E minor pentatonic. And then he goes into some other stuff. But as you can see, sometimes these little exercises can work themselves into great solos. So they're also a good space filler. Like if you don't know what to do sometimes, you know what I mean? That's you're making music there. So it's really good. I can't stress enough how important it is to practice these exercises with these scales. So the next step now is going to be, we need to look at all 5 of the different positions for this key of E minor pentatonic. So the second position is this: 3 and 5, 2, 5, 2, 5, 2, 4, 3, 5, 3, 5. And I recommend keeping each finger on its own fret. So now when you play some of this stuff in a song, you might pop up here and like play that little bit depending on what else is going on. You might play this little bit with these fingers. But when you're learning the scale, it's good to get the scale memorized and get your fingers to stay in the right spot you do it in just in this particular way. Plus, you don't want to skip your pinky all the time because you need it to get stronger and be able to do different things, you know. So here goes the third position. Once again, that was the second position of E minor pentatonic. 3-5, 2-5, 2-5, 2-4, 3-5, 3-5. Now we're going to go to the third position. Starts out with 5-7. Now this one's kind of an interesting case. You could use these fingers because we have a 4 coming up over here. But it's kind of easy enough to just use these stronger first and third fingers and then just shift back a little bit. If you can make that little reach, you could also put a pinky in there if you want. But after that, we have to come back up to this 5 and 8. So you want your first finger to be able to move down to that lower position. Like I said, you could start with it down and then go up. But it's kind of easier to hit these guys and then just come back. So we got 5-7 on that last string, and then 5-8, 8 and 5, 7-4, and then 7-5, 7-5, 7-5. Okay, we're going to come back to that because that's going to be a position that also combines positions really well. And down here it has this thing. So those are the two most important and most used, I would say, combining positions riffs or potential, you know. So you got the low one that gets you all the way into the third position, and you have a third position one that gets you all the way into the end of the fifth position where you're ready to start over on the octave. So let's go back a little bit and we're going to look at this third position again. Like I say, there's some options there as how do you want to finger that. Now this next one's going to be 7-10 twice, and then 7-9 twice, and then 8-10 and 7-10. There we go. And then the last one, 10-12 twice, and then 9-12 twice, and then 10-12 twice. This one, these frets are so close together, I just do the whole thing with first and third. Okay, so that's the fifth position. Let's look at all those one more time. So 0-3, 0-2, 0-2, 0-2, 0-3, 0-3, and then 3-5, 2-5, 2-5, 2-4, 3-5, 3-5. And then 5-7 three times, 4-7, 5-8, 5-7. 7-10 twice, 7-9 twice, 8-10, 7-10. 10-12 on the outsides, 9-12s on the insides. Okay, then we get to the octave. So the octave, the 12th fret, we've gone through all the notes. We started on E, the open E, we've gone all the way up to another E. So this is going to be that same position that we used way up here. This is the one we use to get into every new key, right? And at that point, the positions keep going. They're all on their own octave at that point, so they just continue up. And once you know this grid of these 5 positions, then you can really play up and down the neck in any key eventually when you work on each new key. You'll definitely be able to see a grid and get used to it. One other thing to talk about here, think about if we were in a key like, say, D. So the first position is up here. So we can see how we would connect to the higher positions, but we also want to look at how we connect to lower positions. So we're in D minor pentatonic right there. What if I wanted to go down this way and use these frets that we haven't used? We see how you can connect to go up. But to go down, all you got to remember is what was that 5th position? So in E, the 5th position was this 10-12, 9-12, 10-12. So that's the pattern that we need. And we need to start that on the lower note of the scale than this one in our first position. So when we come down here, we have, this would be like 8-10, 8-10, 7-10. See how that is the 5th pattern? But in this case, to stay in D minor pentatonic, we need to start it below the D. So that makes it in the 5th position of D. And the same thing, this was our lower note of that position. Think about position 4, which had this shape. So this is keeping us in D minor pentatonic the whole way. And then our 3rd position had those 3 in a row. And our second position. So that's how they all connect in either direction, up and down the neck. All right, before I start this next part, I want to say thanks to everybody for watching. I really appreciate it. So continuing on here, I would like to get into some repeating licks. These things can have bends in them. They can also just be a way to kind of buy time when you're soloing. If you can get into a repeating lick that sounds good, it can even go over the chord changes when they change, and it can still sound great, especially in like a pentatonic scale, which is kind of a basic scale. So let's look at one thing here. We might go. So that's the little 12, and then 15, 12 to 14 on the G. Now see how we could take this and make this a pull-off here. So it ends up being down, up with that pick, and then another down. Since we have the pull-off, we don't have to pick each note, so it makes it kind of a little bit easier of a thing to pick, and you can get a little faster. So that's where pull-offs and hammer-ons can really help you out. That would kind of be the opposite of that. So start on the 14, hammer in the 12 to 15, hitting a little 12. Now, let's add one thing to this. Let's add a bend to this when we go down. We're going to bend that 14 up to the sound of the 16. There you're getting into kind of like the rock and blues repeating licks there. You could also use the pinky to pull off if you like that better, and use the ring finger to do that bend. Here's another riff, like a... And that's easy enough with the pick, and just down, up, down, up, down, up, pulling each one off, 15 to 12. Now think about it, that's kind of like our exercise. So that fits kind of into that thing. And then see how you can slide down into different positions, stuff like that. So let's see, here's another one. So we're bending the 14th fret of the G string, and we're hitting that 15th fret of the B string. That can also be a chordal kind of thing. You can also get that pinky down there and get that extra 15 on the bottom. It's kind of a cool country lick. You might end the song with that when you know you're on a major chord kind of thing. That would be a G major. So it's also good to know how the E minor pentatonic is also the G major pentatonic. So it's all the same notes, it just kind of depends on if I'm on this G chord, I'm going to use the G note more. But if I was on E minor, you're going to lean on the E note more, but it's the same scale, see what I'm saying? So if it's G, E minor. There's another thing I want to talk about is the flat fifth. Let's look at the flat fifth if you add this in. It's that B flat there to B. So look at our pentatonic scale. Want to know where to add these flat fifths. In this case, it's B flat for this key. So E, G, A, and then we got our B flat, first fret of the fifth string, and then B, and then D, E, G, A, B flat again, B, D, E, and G. So it's definitely good to know where that is. Let's say if we were in the key of A, that's how it would play out. What about key of C? Okay, so it's good to know where those are. It's good to eventually know where that that flat fifth is in each of your 5 pentatonic positions, but I'm not going to go into that right now. So let's look at some other things like a bend lick. Say we're in A minor pentatonic, we're going to do this bend. We're going to bend the 7th fret of the G string. Now you got this 5 down here on the B string. If you make sure to not move this one, but you move this one against it, eventually they'll hit the same note. This is a higher note, and this is a lower note. See how that note and that note are the same, both E's? So this D is bending into E. So if you have this E already here, those are fun. That's called a unison bend. You want to get those where you hear the note become the same note, and then you can give it some vibrato. Down here would be 8 and 5. So it's good to know about those wherever you are, as well as those types of bends. Now you have something here that's kind of a rock and roll thing. So it's good to practice that one. It's like sets of 3s, like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You could also add to that where you're hitting the chord down here. Now if we go back to this other one, and we add a note to it, 8th fret of the 2nd string. We could also pull that off. It's good to try that in different places. And it kind of sounds like Jimi Hendrix right there, because he would do those types of things like, you know, he would do those like chromatic, doing 1 fret at a time, doing a thing like that. Of course, we've heard things like Machine Head by Deep Purple, where Ritchie Blackmore does some stuff like that. So those are good to know, unison bends. So take a look at all that kind of stuff. Think about repeating licks. You might find your own. So that's like 12, 15 on the B string, going to that little 2, doing like sets of 3s, like triplets. Think about the kind of the opposite of that. You might even put a pinky on this. This would be kind of like a Freebird type lick. Get that pinky up there in that higher fret. You can do that same thing down here in the next string. So those are all good things to practice. And of course, it's always good to know in your pentatonic, the 2nd string, that higher of the 2 notes. So you're in E minor pentatonic. That note right there, 2nd string, the higher of the 2 notes. That one bends into the sound of the root. So you definitely want to know about that one. Often used as a unison bend. Sometimes at the end of a song, you might hit a big one and go, something like that. So it's good to know all those. Now, a unison bend here, because of the mathematics of the string right there, would only be 12 and 14, not 12 and 15. So let's look at one more thing here. We got, on this E minor pentatonic, we have the opens. Let's look at these bottom 2 strings and what happens here. We got these opens here. Opens go to 3s, go to 5s. So you can do sliding chord stuff. Now this one's going to be 7 and 8. That's a very common blues riff, like a... kind of like a Good Morning Little Schoolgirl. But a lot of songs like, say, Pride and Joy, Stevie Ray. That's a very cool sound. And if you know that the root note is right there on the G string next to it, it can be very helpful in your soloing and stuff. So once we get past that 8 and 7, it's 10s and it's 12s. So the bottom 2 strings, they got a lot of sliding potential. You just got to, when you hit that 1 right there, you got to get to the 8 and 7. See, that's the little noise I had going. That's why you want to kind of try to keep something mute in your big strings there. up with your own stuff with those sliding little bottom strings there. But also remember, you got that one that kind of is the cog in the machine there that changes things up a little bit. Let's say if we were in G minor pentatonic, we start in the 3s, up to the 6s, to the 8s. Then we'd have that split kind of thing. All right.